everybody to PechaKucha Eindhoven tonight. I'm Marleen Hartjes. I'm going to be your host of the evening. This evening we have 5 speakers for you. It's going to be exciting, I already know because I talked to everybody. It's very diverse tonight, and we are going to start off with somebody who has got my interest already, because actually if I'm not standing here and I'm not working with art or whatever, I'm also a beekeeper. And the thing about bees is the more you know about bees, the better it is. The better it gets, really. Because bees in its own are their own society, and everybody has their own role. And if there's something wrong in that society, the whole colony doesn't work. And it's actually similar in our society. And I think our next speaker, he's an industrial designer, and he studied at the TUE in Eindhoven. That was a big inspiration for him to do a project about bee beacons, and he's going to tell you everything about it. Let's hear it for Toussaint Jongen.
Hello. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about BBeacon. It's a project that I did last year at my university, and we combined the interest of bees and the Internet of Things to find out how it's going with the bees inside the colony, and how this organism works on its own. And we find out how important are the bees. Well, they are very important. As Albert Einstein said, if the bee disappears, then 4 years later mankind is also disappeared, because they pollinate almost 70% of, or what is it, 1/3 of everything we eat. So apples, pears, fruit, vegetables. So it's very important that they are there. So most people know bees from honey, but next to honey they also make bee wax. They make royal jelly. That's what they feed to the queen to raise the queen. You have propolis, which they use as disinfection material, but they also use the venom, and they even sell the pollen. And the pollen, that's what they collect, which is the most important. To find these pollen, they have this sort of bee dance. There's a wiggling dance, so if they find a flower with food, they fly back to the hive. They do this wiggle dance, which tells them directly, if you angle it to the sun, where this flower is, where the food can be found, with the distance, and even if there's wind, then they also tell this to the other bees so they can find it. So they work very hard. So a bee flies to a flower, then they take pollen with them. They fly to another flower, which they then automatically pollinate. So it's actually a natural habit for them. Then they take this pollen back to the hive, and they store it there for food, and they make, from the nectar they make honey. But there's another loop as well, and that's that they pollinate the food we eat. So they fly to the flower from an apple tree, for example. Then they fly to another apple tree. They pollinate the flowers. The apple grows. When the apple falls from the tree, it starts to rotten, the seeds come out, and a new tree pops out, and then the second circle is round. So that's how important they are. But unfortunately, they are disappearing. So in US, 44% of the bees disappeared last year. In Switzerland, 50% didn't survive the winter in 2011. And in China, they even made it that bad that they got rid of the sparrows. Then a lot of bugs came there, they got rid of the bugs, and now they don't even have bees there to take care of anymore. So they pollinate by hand. So we came up with the BBeacon project. How can we find out what the cause is of the bees disappearing? How can we might help them? By using technology and sensors inside the hive to monitor the well-being of the bees and, well, how they can survive. So we started with, of course, the beekeepers, which is very important because they take care of the bees and they make sure they live, they clean the hive, they make sure there are new queens being born, but they also have kind of financial income because they gather the honey, they gather propolis, the pollen, everything, so they're very important. Then the citizens, of course, we have the gardens with flowers, but also with vegetables and fruit, so we are there to give them, to provide them with food. So we create a kind of bee hotspots for them. And next to that, you also have the municipality. So we wanted to make a connection with all of 3 of this, which is the beekeepers, the citizens, and the municipality, to to make one big network. So the beekeepers keep the bees, they take care of them. The citizens, we wanted to involve them as well because beekeepers are interested in taking care of the bees, of course. And the municipality could use this information to improve their city or improve their town, for example. So the beekeepers gather information, the citizens gather information, they work together, and the municipality can use this information to for a new park or with flowers or maybe like gardens for the citizens. So we came up with 4 products, or actually 2 projects. What is the BBeacon hive, which is left, and the BBeacon flower, which is in the middle, each with their own platform. So they gather information and it's sent to an online platform, and this information can be compared with each other. So this is the hive, and we placed several sensors inside the hive, and we wanted to be as modular as possible, so that not a beekeeper should buy an entirely new hive, but he can place the sensors in every hive he has, which make it cheaper for them, but also easier to use and easier to understand. We have 3 sensors. That is weight for the first one, so you know how the colony is growing during summer, but also if you need to feed them extra during winter. The humidity, so if honey is devaporizing, that you know how also with the weight, and temperature. In the winter they cluster together. But you could also add sound, for example, because as a queen is being born and they start to fly out, then the sound is different. And the online platform is there to compare beekeepers for themselves, but also with other beekeepers, and you can get a global or a regional overview of how are my bees doing here, but how are the bees doing in another place. The second one is the flower, because we wanted to have interest from the people at home as well. So we made a flower with an infrared sensor. So it detects, we added honey, for example, or another thing to lure bees inside. They come to the honey, the infrared sensor counts then, oh, there's one bee, there's a second bee. And then you know, for example, how many bees were today in my garden and how many were in my neighbor's garden. And we added an extra, and on the other side, for solitary bees, because you have honeybees who gather honey to live in the colony, to feed the colony, but you also have the solitary bees. And we took really good care of the design. So we had UV filter, because real flowers also have UV coating on the petals, so that bees see, oh, I've already been there, I don't have to go there because the food is already gone. We took care of the petals, because they don't like a dahlia, like a lot of petals, and they don't like specific colors like red, for example. And we have the application, so people can use this, they can see how many bees were in my garden today, how many bees were in another garden, and this information can be compared with the data of the beekeepers, and so you get an overview of a city, of a region, of a whole country, to see where it's going good, where it's not going very good, and they can learn from each other, so they can improve where it's not going that well. And that's actually my story.
Oh, just stay. You can use that one, or yeah, it's easier. La la la. Good. Are there any questions? I can imagine that there are, really. No. Yes.
Why bees?
Why bees?
Well, because I kind of like nature stuff, so we were with a group of 3 and we just compared our interests, and one was in favor of Internet of Things and I was with nature stuff, so animals or plants, it doesn't matter. And then we just kept on brainstorming and we found out bees, and it's a network on its own. So indeed what she said, it's if the more you know about it, the more interesting it gets. So we found out so much more about these bee dens and what they're collecting, what they do, and it's one big organism that functions as one, and that made it really interesting to use this information and to keep track of them, how they're doing.
Goeie vraag. Other questions? De buurman.
I was wondering if you have any bees yourself now.
No.
Do you have bees yourself now?
No, not yet. my interest got raised a bit more, but I don't have them yet. So who knows? Maybe next season.
Other questions? Yes. Loud and clear.
Why can't bees live on their own?
They can live on their own, but a colony starts to grow. If, for example, if you have a beekeeper, they have this colony, it keeps growing, and at a certain point it's too big. Then they start to breed a new queen, the colony, and they fly out. So why do we need them? Maybe not that much. I think they are being kept for the honey, like years way back they started to keep them for honey. But I think it's also now to maintain the colonies, because they're disappearing quite rapidly. Nobody knows why. But if it's just for nature, then I think nobody could really help them, because they can't be observed or they can't be kept in the colony. They breed queens, so they kind of spread. They can also find out there are diseases, there are like parasites, things, so they can try keep it better in control, I think.
I think, yeah, that's very true. And as a beekeeper, I can add to that well, we don't have caves, and we don't have as much like the holes in the trees anymore. And in old buildings where there are holes and holes in the walls, for instance, there are perfect places where bees can have their colonies. But we are now perfect structured city now with no holes in the walls anymore to keep the bees. So in this setting, it's very hard for bees to grow their honeycombs and to stay alive over winter, because you have to have a certain amount of a certain amount of things you need for a hive to exist. So that's why we beekeepers to make sure the swarms, they will swarm every year, to keep them with them and just split the colony every year. So that's actually their way of reproducing themselves. Like one bee is just, there are 50,000 bees in one colony, and still, yeah, that's just one organism really. So yeah, other question?
Yeah. Can your product help in China to repopulate the bees?
Well, I think so, but what's not clear to me about there, because they got a lot of sparrows, they wanted to get rid of the sparrows, so they extinct them. Then all of bugs came because they were eaten by the sparrows. So then they got rid of the insects. But I'm not sure why they didn't reinstall new beehives around there in the orchids and in the orchids. Sorry. So I'm not sure why they didn't do that. I couldn't find that much about that. So I think it should be possible, but maybe it's like too toxinated, the environment, that it's not possible anymore.
That's the reason. It's just too like toxic. The toxic things that you spread out on your fields. Yeah. In China, they don't. Yeah, they don't care. So they just really. So that like they don't have any bees, but also not any insects in. And then they're like the school children. A couple of weeks a year, they have to go out and climb the trees, and with some feathers, you have to pollinate the apple trees. It's just ridiculous.
They even sell the pollen in shops, so you can buy pollen to pollinate your own apple tree in your garden.
And it doesn't work. It doesn't work as well as the bees. I think I've read somewhere that's actually like 30 or 40% of the whole apple tree can be pollinated by children, while bees do the whole thing. So it doesn't work. Other questions? Yeah?
You said in the beginning that colony functions as a single organism, like one part fills, the whole colony fills. Does this project help to identify at what point the whole colony fills? So at what point you have to step in to prevent colony collapse?
Well, one of the ideas we had, if you measure weight, a colony in a good summer moment, like the season, they should increase by 400 grams a day, the complete hive. So that's honey, wax, bees, pollen. So for example, if there's only 200 grams a day or even less, then you can think after a week, What's the cause of it? Maybe it was bad weather, because if it rains they don't fly out, but maybe it was perfect weather, there's enough food, or maybe there wasn't enough food, so you can think of the causes. Why isn't the colony growing as it should? For another thing is in the winter they have this honey where they live from, where they survive, but we take the honey normally, so we have to feed them with sugar water or sugar bread as they call it. But you don't want to disturb them in winter because it's cold, and if you disturb them, if they fly out now in this cold, they will die in 1 minute. So you need to be really careful. Sometimes they listen, like if the buzzing sound is still there. But if you could see from outside without opening the hive, without disturbing how much weight is still in there, then you can think, oh, I can feed them now, or I need to feed them. Then I think it gives more control to the beekeeper, and it's more peaceful for the bees itself.
I think it's a brilliant project. Let's end up with those 2 questions. Yes? Do you have a question? Yeah?
What you were just saying about the sugar, because that's what I read on the internet, that's not as nutritious as the honey, they actually bring themselves. So basically we're kind of stealing the food from the bees. So do you think that in order to actually save the sugar, we should cut back on our whole honey consumption maybe? Was that like actually something about before?
Yeah, I think that it would help, but I think even if you would give them a full hive with honey, it isn't enough to maybe survive the winter, because you never know how long winter takes. If you look at last winter, it didn't freeze at all, almost. Now it's already started freezing in November, so it depends. So they almost every season or every winter they need to give them extra food. So I don't think it doesn't matter that much if you steal the honey for the winter and then replace it with other food, because it's enough for them to survive and to eat from during the winter.
Yeah, and it's not their only food. They have like the pollen as well to get the nutrition from. So, but it's a good point. Good point.
Is a city like Amsterdam a good, healthy environment for bees?
I don't know about Amsterdam, but when we started this project, we were like, oh, the countryside is like heaven for bees, because there's so much fields and forests and flowers and stuff, and the city is because there's so much buildings. But it's actually the other way around, because in cities there live people, and people always have flowers even if it's on their balcony, or they have a small garden. And outside in the countryside, there's only fields with this low food providing crops like corn or wheat or
Monoculture.
Yeah, monoculture. So they can't find. It's actually a desert to them if they fly out. So maybe a city like Amsterdam or like Eindhoven, there's more industry, so there's a bit more like filled in the air and stuff. But I think because there live so much people with providing food, I think it's even better than on the countryside.
Yes, become a beekeeper, because the cities are the best place to do that. Thank you so much. Toussaint, Jongen.